Welcome to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have real, honest, smart, and sometimes even hilarious conversations about co-parenting, separation, and divorce, and all that goes along with that. I'm Kate Anthony, your divorce survival guide, certified life and relationship coach, and happily divorced mom who helps women decide if they should stay in or leave their marriages and then guides them through the process one step at a time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate every minute you spend with me. I know you have busy lives and are managing a lot, so I really am grateful for the time you spend with me each week. Just a few things I want to remind you about today. The first is that if you're not already, hop on over to Instagram and follow me there. I post daily with information and thoughts and sometimes kind of ridiculous shit, but mostly things that I think are super important to the divorce process. So you can find me over on Instagram at Coach Kate Anthony. So hit me up over there. And the other thing I want to remind you about are a couple of new programs that I've just launched. All of my programs are one-on-one coaching experiences because I really believe that deciding to stay in or leave your marriage is a personal process that requires a lot of dedicated care. That being said, I want to try to make it as accessible as possible. So I've created two new programs that are more financially accessible than a 3-month one-on-one coaching program, which is what I've really been offering exclusively for the last few years. First, I created a deep dive one-off coaching session, which is designed to help you dig into some of the more intense aspects of figuring out whether it's him or you. And in this session, we dig deeply into some of your biggest concerns and complaints, and I give you honest feedback about all of them, including a personalized prescription plan after our call. The other program is called Rooted, and you've probably heard me talk about it before. It's a 5-week one-on-one coaching experience designed to help you find your strength, build your confidence, and step into your power. If you feel like you know what you want and need to do, but you just don't feel like you have the strength or confidence to do it, this program is exactly for you. You can find more information on both programs in the show notes and on my website, kateanthony.com, under the tab called You and Me. Okay, so this episode is really all about permission. It's about how women seem to evolve in middle age and how we seem to be outgrowing our marriages at seemingly alarming rates, and how to know if that's okay or not. So without talking about it too much, let's go straight into the episode. So in the last few weeks, I've been speaking with clients, and there's a recurring theme that keeps coming up. I keep hearing women say that their husband's a really nice guy, he's a great dad, he's a great provider. They list their husband's great qualities, and then they berate themselves for their own misery, and usually end up in a wail or a cry of, why can't I just be happy? So it's at this point that I start to probe a bit more deeply. Because here's the thing, if he is all the things she says he is, we do need to determine if the sense of dissatisfaction is going to continue beyond the marriage. If you're totally miserable outside of your marriage, you're going to be miserable inside your marriage. And by outside your marriage, I mean sort of, on your own as an individual. And if you're not dealing with personal issues, then you can blow up your marriage and your family and leave your husband, but chances are that you'll still be miserable. So if you're attributing your misery to your husband, but it's really just a bunch of shit you haven't dealt with yet, you'll rank among the 68% of second marriages that end in divorce as well. Because rather than dealing with your shit, you're trading out the guy you blamed for all that shit, and we really can't have that. But here's what I find overwhelmingly. When I begin to probe, what comes up for these women is that they feel that their husbands don't see them. Not truly, not deeply. They may see the mom, the cook, the co-parent, the chore sharer, but they no longer see the woman. And here's what I know about women. We continue to grow, often behind the thin veil of motherhood, but we continue to expand into ourselves at an almost alarming pace in middle age. Now, I can't speak for men because I'm not one. And frankly, I haven't asked a lot of men about this, but I do know this to be true of women because I am one and because we have these conversations with one another every single day. So I'm not saying that men don't grow. I'm simply saying that women do so at this magnificent speed somewhere around middle age, whether we have children or not. And it's hormonal. It's all of these things that are happening to us internally at this period of time. And it takes a high level of communication and commitment for a marriage to survive this massive emotional growth spurt. What happens for us, especially after motherhood, when our kids have grown beyond us, beyond needing us to fulfill every one of their immediate life or death needs, when we start to remember who we are, when our consciousness returns to ourselves, when we start to question who we are now, who we ever were to begin with, and who we want to be now, what happens at that point is that we begin to question everything. We take a magnifying glass to everything. And when we realize that we haven't truly been seen for 5, 7, 10 years, when we realize we haven't acknowledged ourselves even, and we bring that back to our marriage and we ask to be seen, we beg to be seen, we're changing the rules of the game. We're changing the rules of the game that we've been playing for a long ass time. And often the person we've been playing with can't wrap themselves around this new game or these new rules. And sometimes we're really fucking clear about what we need now. And sometimes we're not. And sometimes we don't have any energy left to explain it all. This is where it comes down to we just want our husbands to get it. We want them to intuit it, because if they just see us, then they'd know what we need. And what I say to my clients at this point is that communication is our responsibility. It is our job to be able to communicate our wants, our needs, our desires with our partner in a way that they can hear it. But if they've been having the same conversation with the same results for years and years, or even months and months, if they've been told that they're too sensitive, if their needs have been unacknowledged or diminished, then it might be time to acknowledge that the skin you're living in no longer fits. And here's where we come to the main message of this podcast episode, which is that you are allowed to change. You are allowed to grow. And you are allowed to choose to leave your marriage. And I know that may sound really controversial, and that may be a big bomb that I've just dropped on you. But if you have done all the work that you can, if you've been to therapy, if you've been in coaching, if you've asked your husband to go to therapy with you, if you've been bending yourself into a pretzel for the last 10 years, trying to take all of the responsibility for all of the things because you've been taught in 12-step rooms, in personal development programs, in therapy, what have you, that you are responsible for your happiness and that you can create any relationship you want, but it's still not fucking working, your marriage at this point in time may be unworkable. And that's okay. And the thing that can be hard for us to wrap our minds around is that no one has to be at fault. No one has to be wrong. When something isn't workable, it's often no one's fault. If a pair of shoes doesn't fit, it's not the shoe's fault. It's not your foot's fault. They just don't fit. And if they fit 10 years ago when you first bought them, or you thought they did, but now you realize they were never really that comfortable to begin with, are you supposed to force yourself to wear those shoes every day for the rest of your life? Just because 10 years ago when you paid good money for them, you promised you would? No, that would be completely insane. I've been accused of being a champion for divorce. I am not. What I am is a champion of women. I am a champion of women making powerful choices, taking ownership of their lives and their circumstances. I am a champion of women living healthy, happy, and fulfilled lives. And if that means leaving their husbands, then I will help them to do so in the healthiest and most collaborative way possible in service of protecting their children from the fallout. Overwhelmingly, I hear that men are in it for the long haul. They've made a commitment and they don't tend to feel the levels of dissatisfaction that women feel. 69% of marriages are ended by women. And oftentimes their husbands are blindsided. Unfortunately, most of the women I speak to tell me that they've been telling their husbands they're unhappy for years, but somehow it's not landing. It could be that these women aren't communicating clearly. It could be that they've been abundantly clear, but their husbands don't want to listen. 2 weeks after I ended my marriage, my husband came to me and said, "I'm so sorry. I just never thought you'd leave." And we had been in couples therapy and group couples therapy for years beforehand. And 6 months before that, I had told him that I was going to leave. But when it came down to it, he really never thought I would. So again, I am not a champion for divorce, but if you are not happy and if you've tried everything you know to become happy within yourself, and if you know in your gut it's because your marriage simply isn't a good fit, you are allowed to leave. He doesn't have to be an abusive asshole for you to be driven out of your marriage. You're simply allowed to choose to not feel stifled any longer. You're allowed to expand into your full potential as a woman, as a human. And if that full expansion doesn't align with your current circumstances, ask yourself why not. What is it about your marriage that makes you feel that you have to stay small in order for it to continue to work? I want to conclude this episode by reading to you what I sent my email list this week. A client told me this week that she'd learned to walk on eggshells around her husband because she's afraid of how he might react. She's afraid of what he'll think, do, or say. He's not abusive, she's not in danger, but she's learned to tailor her habits so as not to upset him. She's afraid of rocking the boat. After some discussion, I said, if you're afraid of rocking the boat, it's probably not your boat. How many of us have been adrift in someone else's boat? How many of us have been tailoring our habits and activities so as not to upset someone else? Having sex when we don't want to have sex, having less sex than we want, having the wrong kind of sex, eating food we don't like, modulating our voices, cleaning up messes, feeling stifled, all so we don't rock someone else's boat. We've given over pieces of ourselves, inch by inch, pound by pound. We've given someone else our power, whether it be our mother, our father, our husband, our boss. We've given over our entire lives, all so we don't rock someone else's boat. What if this was your boat? What if, just for today, you grabbed the oars and rowed in the direction you want to go? What if, just for today, you owned every piece of wood, every ounce of water dripping off the oars, every rock and creak of the vessel in which you exist? Would you do anything differently? If the answer is yes, then you may be in someone else's boat. And the truth of the matter is that you are allowed to build your own boat. Your happiness, your future, your fulfillment as a human, as a woman, depends upon it. Thanks for listening to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. You can find me over at kateanthony.com and be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes so you don't miss an episode. See you next time.